Cultivation theory and ethnic stereotypes. Okay. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, nearly 80% of the population will watch TV on a given day. People spend up to 10 hours a day streaming or using media. While traditional TV may be on the decline, it does not subtract from its exposure or influence. Research analysis continues to find stereotyping and misrepresentation of ethnic minorities in different media outlets. Often stereotypical characterizations of race and ethnicity often in the media influences attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors of audience members, whites in particular. Today I will review how cultivation theory can misguide perceptions of ethnic minorities due to their misrepresentations in the media, with a direct focus on Asian Americans. Stereotyping can be defined as a fixed, overgeneralized belief about a particular group or class of people, Cardinal 96. Blacks are often represented as aggressive, violent, loud, or impulsive, while Hispanics can be shown as uneducated with low-paying jobs. Asian Americans are often depicted with minor roles. Blacks comprise 15 to 17%, and Latinos make up 4 to 7% of primetime television. According to a Pew Research analysis of the U.S. Census Bureau, Asian Americans are the fastest growing ethnic group within the U.S., with more than 20 million living in the U.S. alone. With that being said, they still hold minimal roles, often depicted in the same recurring ways, as high-status figures, exotic, unassimilated, or villainous. Cultivation theory best explains the effects of media's stereotypical portrayal of ethnic groups on people's perception of Asian Americans. Cultivation theory, developed by George Gerbner and colleagues, is the idea that television is so pervasive in our culture that it cultivates certain views across all segments of society. Cultivation theory links media content with the acquisition of stereotypes, suggesting that repeating exposure to media stereotypes may lead to the acceptance in stereotypes as a social reality. Zhang 2010. Asian Americans today represent about 5.7% of the population in the U.S. and are currently the highest growing demographic of any major racial group. The various formats of media keep similar consistent representations of Asian Americans, amongst newspaper articles, advertising ads, or television roles. The earliest portrayals were trivial roles with hardly any substance. They were depicted as martial artists, exotic curiosities, poor communicators, and Orientalists. Oftentimes they were portrayed by white actors with the use of yellowface or yellow apparel. The most popular example is Mickey Rooney's performance in Breakfast at Tiffany's as Mr. Yumiyoshi. Oxford Research Encyclopedia defines yellow apparel as white actors playing Asian-identified characters. The performances not only misrepresent Asian and Asian Americans by limiting their opportunities, it also supports a distinct image of them. It wasn't until most recently where the media began to portray them in successful roles such as doctors and lawyers. It also falls under the model minority stereotype, developed in the 60s and 70s around the Civil Rights Movement. Since then, media began to promote Asians from being a racial minority to being a shining example of other racial minorities, Zhang 2010. Research shows that even with this representation, they still make less than their white counterparts. Although the model minority seems to be a positive one, it's inherently linked to yellow apparel stereotypes. Ramsburnian 2011. The model minority stereotype, although perceived highly, has been linked to harmful impacts. Research reveals that academic excellence of Asian Americans has tremendous psychological costs, such as studying harder and longer, foregoing social life, enduring loneliness and alienation, and experiencing extreme depression and stress. The lasting stereotype is that of the perpetual foreigner, where they are hardly ever depicted as full-fledged Americans. Asian Americans are rated the least American, falling in fourth behind whites, Hispanics, and blacks. In a study by Dr. Q Zhang in 2010, Asian Americans are more likely to be rejected by their peers than any other racial groups. High pressure falls on them to assimilate and integrate themselves into the American dream, and inclusion is met with rejection and exclusion. Methodology. Research participants for research were mostly Caucasian coworkers and friends. Most data was initiated through Google Form survey and scaled with open-ended questions. They had the opportunity to recall past and present shows that they had watched or watched regularly. They got to reflect on the entertainment industry, they view, and the misrepresentation based on their observations. Scale questions broke down characteristics displayed on TV, breaking down Blacks, Hispanics, and Asian Americans. All participants are educators in Title I or lower income schools in the DFW Metroplex. Results. Data based on ethnic minorities was consistent. Highest underrepresented group was Asian Americans. Two lead shows discussed were Friends and Fresh Off the Boat, and the movie Crazy Rich Asians. All agreed until recently the group was underrepresented in the entertainment industry. Most fell under the model minority stereotype or comical roles. Friends, for example, a participant identified few to non-ethnic minorities. One character she was able to identify was that of Ross's girlfriend in season 2. Julie, also presented in the model minority stereotype. And Fresh Off the Boat, though broke grounds as a method of industry inclusion of Asian Americans in the forefront of television, the cast was very inclusive. Nerdy, smart, Oreo stereotype was laid out. One thing in particular did mention was the depiction that directly correlates with stereotype of moms are strict, dad follows mom's orders, and kids are smart. A movie mentioned was that of Crazy Rich Asians. It was the first time in nearly 20 years in which the movie consisted of all Asian or Asian American cast. Even with that said, roles were noticed that fell directly under the either immigrant stereotype with the pressure to assimilate or to achieve the American dream. It becomes an issue for people who don't interact much with other races. Whites can see them as a threat against themselves and their society. With Asian Americans being so sparse within the country, the probability of not just exclusion, but cultivation of the minority is at much higher risk in a community with minimal integration of a different culture. Participants, no matter what ethnicity, they discussed within the survey and in person could all agree that heavy viewers within communities with minimal integration could all be influenced by messages viewed in the media. Ethnic minorities are much more represented in the media today and in much better light than ever before. Even being so, stereotypes and the misrepresentation of groups are still a high factor in mainstream media. Of all three, Asian Americans are most underrepresented. Research and data correlate national findings with their representation in primetime and mainstream media. There's a common understanding that perception can be shifted based on viewership, especially if the choice is made to accept racial stereotypes and cultivate their perceptions. With the rise of the population, so have advocates for change, such as Korean American artist Eric Nam, pushing for better representation for Asian Americans in the forefront of entertainment industry.